Alright, doing house on Sandra Cisneros, house on Mango Street today. Always pretty popular with my students, and I must say, it came out in 1991. Cisneros was, excuse my, I'm going to do my best with my Spanish pronunciation. It probably won't be very good. Cisneros was the daughter, I believe, of Chicano immigrants in Chicago, and I believe in the 50s and the 60s. She kind of created this little book, which has become kind of a staple of the high school curriculum. And you can understand why. It's a very simple book. You can easily teach this in high school. However, I must say, I have this worked better. I thought of my especially my community college classes where I've taught it for a while than I would have thought. I wasn't sure this would be enough. That maybe much in the same way I feel like To Kill a Mockingbird, more of a high school than a college text. I kind of thought that of this, and maybe it is, but I don't know. I think I'm also very partial to beautiful writing, and Mrs. Cisneros was a poet before she ever wrote any prose. And this is I like the way, boy, the shape of this book is sort of beautiful. It is written in a series of vignettes, they're called, which are kind of these little prose poems, which stand on their own. I think it's 44 stories or something, and then 46 total vignettes. It's kind of gorgeously sort of structured, and it's again, some of them seem to sort of maybe wander off and not have too much to do with it, and they do all stand alone, but they absolutely gain a sort of a fuller, richer, deeper meaning by being together as well. There are some recurring characters, mainly Esperanza, the main character, who's somewhat loosely based on Cisneros' younger self, I guess, and a bit of a, I guess it's loosely based on the growing up in the sort of Southside Chicago barrios of her youth, and these are very much immigrant neighborhoods we're getting here, and there's a couple of themes I think running through here. We do get a sort of yes, a little bit that almost reminded me a little of Lorraine Hansberry. I remember when she wrote Raisin in the Sun, and she was asked about it, and she was like, "I want to prove," it was sort of the black version of the American Dream play, right? And she said, "I want to prove." To people, and she meant white people basically, that we could be just as beautiful, just as complicated, just as tragic, as white people could be. And I do think there's a sense of that running through this, I think too, and there is a sort of kind of baked in to the entire book, that this sort of kind of a writing against, or writing back against a sort of maybe a bit of a condescending view a lot of white people have of Latino and Latina immigrants. And again, just some of the language here really is at times breathtaking. I mean, it's really beautiful. It's written also in a little girl's voice and a very young girl's voice, but boy, what she could do with that voice! There's this sort of a little bit of a sassy sort of little girl too, and you've got this sort of little bit of attitude, but it's very much, it seems like a 12-year-old kind of attitude, even though I don't think a 12-year-old would be able to turn some of these phrases, and just that you're getting that voice, that young girl's sort of voice describing everything. Because again, you have the sort of a bit of a writing back about the maybe the condescending attitude a lot of mainstream America, which I do think she's thinking of as white America has toward the Latino community, but also very much a bit of a polemic, and I think this is much more prevalent and obvious, about the very misogynistic attitudes of the Hispanic culture, in these kinds of neighborhoods. I'll read. I'm going to read just a few sections here, and again, you get it kind of bookended sort of beautifully, where it begins, and again, as we're going out, we're finding out that the girl we're going through the story with is the one who's writing the book. And then at the end, she's starting to write the book and goes right back to these opening sentences. It's really, I think it worked gorgeously. We didn't always live on Mango Street. Before that, we lived on Loomis on the third floor. Before that, we lived on Keeler. Before Keeler, it was Paulina. Before that, I don't remember. But what I remember most is moving a lot. Each time it seemed there'd be one more of us. By the time we got to Mango Street, there were 6: Mama, Papa, Carlos, Kiki, my sister Nenny, and me. The house on Mango Street was ours, and we don't have to pay rent to nobody, share the yard with the people downstairs, or be careful not to make too much noise, and there isn't a landlord banging on the ceiling with a broom. But even so, it's not the house we thought we'd get. And then we right away we're getting into one of the maybe the main trope, which there are two houses, right, in this book, and one is the house on Mango Street she lives in, which is a dilapidated, kind of run down, typical house in an American inner city. Not maybe we don't get too much out of it other than she doesn't like living there. There's one very quick scene we get here where a nun sort of looks at her, she's like, and they looked on the upstairs. Maybe it was the house before Mango Street actually here, but she's like, no, I think it was Mango Street. She goes, you live there? There? He kind of made a face. And she's like, she said it like I was nothing. Boy, that plants a kind of seed of sort of ambition. A little bit of that sort of a discomfort and a shame that quickly kind of burns into a kind of drive in this young girl that she wants to get out. She's going to get a different house, and she does do that by the end of the book, as Cisneros did in real life, by the way. Anyway, we these are a series of vignettes. They're really they're sort of prose poems. A lot of very pretty writing, a lot of poignant things, and you basically get this sort of again maybe it gets a bit polemical at times, but right, again, running against this sort of misogynist culture that she's sort of immersed in. You get also and again her culture sort of views women as cute little girl. They're supposed to be sort of cute little girls, almost doll-like, to grow into sort of erotic objects, right, for the young men to look pretty for boys. There's a lot of obsessing over that among a lot of her friends, and then eventually, wives and to mother children, and that is sort of the way they see as women should be, and there's also a lot of what some of the lies she claims she's fed. Of this in fairy tales, and the princess waiting, right? And the princess is always waiting. She's not an active character. She's kind of a passive one. She's always waiting. The damsel in distress to be saved by the hero. She wants to be the hero of her own story. To plug a little bit of David Copperfield there, And it is a building. There's a German, one of those great German nouns, Bildungsroman. Only literary scholars kind of know the word, but it is essentially. I think it literally translates into the boy goes to the city story, and it's the maturation story, and we are getting that here. We're also getting the portrait of an artist as well here. And again, there are several fairy tale tropes, right? We get. Rapunzel, which is a woman who lives on the street and who she doesn't actually let down her hair. She has a rope. She throws the kids some change and a little extra to get something for themselves to go get her the sort of I don't know if it's Goya drinks or something like that from the store because her husband locks her into her apartment. There's definitely a bit a Little Red Riding Hood sort of tale here. We get the wonderful and there's sort of a combination too of that in the shoes, I believe it's called. Let me where they find. Sorry, Shoes. I think it's just called Shoes. Anyways, it's about when these three, her and her few friends find some high heel shoes in one of their mother's closets. And then again, they're about maybe 12 or so, which means maybe a couple of them are just starting to, maybe develop a womanly figure, or the hint of one. And they are sort of walking around, and boy, they are there's a sort of an exhilaration that I think supposed actually matures or sort of evolves into a kind of an inebriation in their feminine power in these shoes as they're walking around. People are paying attention to them. Boys are whistling at them, and again there's this sort of a arousal and a real reaction to these to all this male attention. There's a grocer who sort of warns them, "Who told you to put those shoes on? Your mother knows you're wearing those shoes. Those shoes are dangerous." He's an older, wiser man, kind of letting them know. They sort of ignore him, and eventually there's a bum. They come across kind of a homeless, drunk, that's a local drunk, and he's willing to give. I think Sally, who's the most daring of these girls, and will prove it to be. She'll pay the price for being that too. And he's sort of waving at, "I'll give you $1 for a kiss." And she's sitting there, she's looking at that $1, which means something to her. She's thinking, but the girl's going to have to drag her away. And eventually, the guy kind of is scared to all of them. And they kind of they decide that, maybe they're going to stay little girls, after all, a little bit longer. And kind of put those shoes in their I think they put them back in underneath in the attic or wherever it is they were the porch they found them on. And again, so that fairy tale trope kind of running through it. Also, there's a sort of ascending order of female, role models, that Esperanza is picking. And at first, she likes, Sally's more her age and a little older, but only a little, and more of a friend. But Marin, I think, might be the first one. And, Marin's nice to her. And here, maybe I'll just read this pretty short. I think, she has a boyfriend, supposedly in Puerto Rico, right? And she wants to get a job downtown, at a makeup counter, because she can get free makeup, and that's where all the cool jobs are, and that's where she'll really meet a man. And again, these girls are always waiting to meet that sort of Prince Charming. It doesn't seem to work out for many of them. But I tell you what, Esperanza is a young girl who's more of a sensitive girl. She's going to grow up to be a writer. She's also going to grow up to reject a lot of this culture, but she's not there yet. And she really admires the courage, of girls like Mary. Who, when boys look at her, she looks back at them and she's not afraid, right? She's good looking, and she knows she's good looking, and she kind of wears her sort of struts her feminine power. She has to babysit her cousins all day, but she kind of can just sit outside by the stone wall in front of their house at night and sort of play music and just sort of be there to be seen by boys who will, sort of catcall her, and she sort of interacts with some of them. And we get this. What matters, Marin says, is for the boys to see us and for us to see them. And since Marin's skirts are shorter, and since her eyes are pretty, since Marin already is older than us in many ways, the boys you do pass say stupid things like, "I am in love with those green apples you call eyes. Give them to me, why don't you?" And Marin just looks at them without blinking and is not afraid. And then this poignant last line to this, though. Marin, this is obviously that. And again, childhood itself, right? This is written from the eyes of a child, but it's an adult writing it. And childhood itself is an invention of adults, right? It's always retrospective. And then every now and again, that sort of a little bit of an adult voice just sort of breaks through. And again, Marin looks back at them without even blinking and is not afraid. Marin, under a streetlight, dancing by herself, is singing the same song somewhere, I know, is waiting for a car to stop, a star to fall, someone to change her life. And there are several girls like that, and who are a little more daring, and choose to. And by the way, there doesn't seem to be a lot offered to the girls besides this in the neighborhood. And listen, it is exciting to be, if you're a young woman getting to that age, to sort of be looked at as you're approaching that sort of full physical, sort of are growing into womanhood. But she eventually, Esperanza is eventually going to reject this. She doesn't see it. She sees it's not really leading anywhere, which separates her from them a lot. There's one story, and there's one story with her and Sally. Later, which gets actually a bit it gets pretty ugly. It's sort of her sexual initiation, which is dark, and her friend Sally. And maybe I'll go back to the earlier friend and come back to the Red Clowns. The earlier one is the Monkey Garden, which is this place. It's a little junkyard. Actually, it's not so little, I don't think, but it's a junkyard. Near where they live, and they all, I guess the people who own it don't really mind. The kids all play in there, and it's like this adventure. And there's this, and again, it gets turned into a kind of Eden here. It's described as being the oldest place they thought on Earth. And again, this is little kids looking at it like that, but they thought this place had been there forever. And it's almost like an archaeological site in a way, And they have all kinds of adventures, and they think there's dinosaur bones. Some of the all the engine parts and things like that, and sprockets and gears and all that, laying around the place. And there's also, cars and everything else from the crawling to and going to. And they have wonderful sort of times in this. You can tell it's a warm memory from the childhood. But then Sally, who matures a little older than the others. And again, she was described at one point as having, eyes like Egypt and nylon's the color of smoke, right? And all the girls at school think she's beautiful. Sally, and her father beats her because he does not want. And again, there's also this sort of a very borderline, sort of a obsessive sort of obsession by a lot of fathers on the daughters and their chastity, and it still sort of means something in this culture in a way. I'm not sure it means that much to too many of us in, say, America 2020, although the rest of the world, I think, might be, a lot of the rest of the world anyway, might be a bit different than that. But Sally, the boys take something from her, and they take her keys. They won't give, but they only give her back her keys if she kisses every one of them. I think there's about 4 or 5 of them. And she agrees, and Esperanza is just freaked out and wants to help her friend. Goes running, home, finds her mother, the mother of one of the boys, who's there with a cigarette coming out of her mouth, ironing a shirt. Door open to their second floor flat. She kind of goes in, tells her what's going on. She's like, what do you want me to do about it, right? The mother's not going to do anything about what these boys are doing to that girl, and outright just says so. And Esperanza, to her great credit, kind of goes running down there, and I think she grabs like a brick and a stick or something to go try to defend her friend. And when she gets there, her friend is like, "Just go on, go play with the little kids if you want to. I'm staying here." Sally, again, Sally's kind of breaking off and going into that sort of teenagehood a little bit earlier, and Esperanza kind of wants to not hang on to that a little while. And again, back to that sort of fairy tale. I know Rip Van Winkle's not necessarily a fairy tale, but she cries and she cries and she falls asleep under a tree. She wakes up, and it seems like her feet are so much bigger; they're not hers anymore. And again, something's happened here, right? Her innocence is sort of, it is the loss of this Eden, this world they had once, and she's not. She's not quite the same little girl. She's never going to be able to go back to being a little girl quite the way she had before. And again, it seems like her feet are bigger and have moved farther away from her. Again, almost like Rip Van Winkle. Like, again, one of the first the American, the works, important works of American literature. Kind of interesting that she picked that. Just like, and again, the trope here, the house, that getting one's own home is a staple of the American dream, right? And so there are a lot. We also get a lot of neighbors, interesting people, and eccentrics and everything. And she really does turn this sort of a very poor, and I'm guessing even a bit dangerous neighborhood in that time and place. That crime rate would have been pretty high in that neighborhood. But she kind of turns into a place of enchantment almost with all these beautiful sort of images and languages and all the fairy tale imagery. And everything. There is a later. There's one of the neighbors though. I'll tell this one first. who is a woman, a very large, corporate guy, almost maybe morbidly obese woman who apparently the husband of the cab driver had to push and pull to get this woman out of the cab. And she lives upstairs, and she knows her husband had moved here, found work, brought his, scraped and saved, brought his wife here, and she does not want to be here. She wants to be back home. And boy, I tell you what, that is in my experiences with immigrant. I've had plenty of immigrant friends, and I'm also the son of an Irish immigrant, but an immigrant off the boat immigrant myself. And I'll tell you what, they never. And I don't know if I would say my mom has really, in a serious way, wanted to move back to Ireland, but boy, she's never gotten over the loss of the homeland. And I do think the more common, some want to come to America. They think of course, they think the roads are. They see how much people make. They don't realize how much it's going to cost to live here. And they always sort of think they're going to be doing better than they really do. It's always more of a struggle than they realize. And also, I think most immigrants come here, and the plan is to save enough money here to go back home where they really want to be and live the way they want. And I think if you trace our bloodlines back in America far enough, I think most of us probably descended from someone who drew their last breath in this country, homesick, still thinking they were going to make it back home. And that is this sort of poignant and unavoidable, but also sad part of assimilation and immigration, I think, to this country, or any country, I guess. Later, we do get another scene, which is a much harsher scene, called Red Clowns. Let's see if I could find it here. And this one's a rougher, to get not long after that monkey scene I was talking about earlier. She where Sally goes off on a boy. They're a little older now, but and maybe Esperanza might be almost ready to kiss a boy, but that's about it. And they're in a bazaar, they're in a carnival. They go into some place with red clowns. She walks off with a boy, leaving Esperanza with others. She is sexually assaulted in some way. It's not completely clear. I don't think it's like penetration rape, but she is sexually assaulted in a way that she doesn't like, and she is just furious. Sort of at the end of this. And Sally, 100 times she's angry and hurt, at her friend for leaving her. And really hurt toward this whole culture at this point. Sally, 100 times. Why didn't you hear me when I called? Why didn't you tell them to leave me alone? The one who grabbed me by the arm, he wouldn't let me go. He said, "I love you, Spanish girl. I love you." And pressed his sorrow lip to mine. There seems to be an implication these boys are white boys do. Sally, make them stop. I couldn't make them go away. I couldn't do anything but cry. I don't remember. It was dark. I don't remember. Please don't make me tell it all. And why did you leave me all alone? I waited my whole life. I waited her whole life. It was supposed to be special this first time with the boy, right? You're a liar. They all lied. All the books and magazines, everything that told it wrong. Only his dirty fingernails against my skin. Only his sour smell again. The moon that watched, that tilled the world. The red clowns laughing, their thick tongue laughed. Then the colors began to whirl, the sky tipped, their high black gym shoes ran. Sally, who lied, he wouldn't let me go. He said, I love you, Spanish girl. And again, he lied, and all those, the fairy tales, that there was a prince coming, coming for her if she was good and behaved, right, is there. And, a bit of a tough growing up. But again, as Sally would be the last of the... And again, things don't turn out so great for Sally. She ends up marrying a marshmallow salesman, and I don't know... I suppose Prince Charming can come in many forms in modern capitalism, but I'm not sure fucking, the marshmallow salesman's one of them. And she ends up just being stuck, and then again, so many of these women seem to be stuck in there, like a floor up, and the image running throughout this whole thing is leaning their sadness on an elbow, and all the women just sitting on their elbow, almost like house cats, sort of just looking out. They were stuck in their house because their husbands don't want them going anywhere, while they're at work all day, and stuck at the window, sort of staring out and watching life sort of pass them by, and she's determined not to begin. And Sally becomes one of those women too, and because she's so beautiful, her husband's really not going to let her out, right? But there are also positive role models. There is her mom, first of all, who's a warm, very warm presence, as is her father, by the way, her papa, who wakes up in the dark, is what she calls him. Um, it's a very, very poignant little vignette where he tells her after his mom died and he has to go back to Mexico for the funeral, and kind of breaks down crying in front of her. Who, and she's never seen him cry before. And there's also, I'm trying to remember, there's mother, Alicia. There's the three weird sisters, which are almost some sort of echo of Macbeth, except they're strange, but also very sort of positive. There's another girl, she reads poet. They read each other's writings. And Alicia, who wakes up with a tortilla star, is how they put it, and whose mother has died, and that's kind of one of those girls who's a little bit become, her father's wife. At least fill those duties of cleaning the house, cooking his food, packing his lunch, doing things maybe he shouldn't be having her doing, but that's what's expected of the girls in this world. And she managed to do all that, and then get on a couple of buses and get downtown and get her education. And she becomes sort of the positive role model for Esperanza. And at the end, Esperanza, I'm going to leave. And there's a lot of that. I'm not staying here. I'm going to leave this place. I'm going to get out of this place. And eventually, she also, and again, it's a buildings roman, but it is a female version of that. She doesn't just leave the world behind. She keeps her feminine nature. She will always take care of people. She always think of others as well. It's where the male hero isn't always. He often sacrifices greatly, by the way, the male hero figure for his culture. But there's and her friend, Alicia says this to her at the end. And she's like, "You'll leave, but you'll also come back." And she's like, "I'm not coming back." He's like, "I won't come back till they straighten it out." And Alicia says, "Well, who's going to do that? The mayor, right?" And they both laugh because the politicians and the leaders of this, the city of Los Angeles, Chicago, don't really care about these parts of the city, and no one's going to fix anything, and they know that. But finally, she does get a house of her own, and she says it's quiet as snow, right? As clean as the paper before the poem, right? These beautiful lines, and she's very happy at the end where she is. And then presumably she sits down to write the book we're now finishing reading, right? And it ends again in this sort of gorgeous bookend here, and I'll read this whole last little bit here, or not all of it, I guess. We didn't always live on Mango Street. Before that, we lived on Loomis on the third floor. Before that, we lived on Keeler. Before Keeler was Paulina. But what I remember most is Mango Street. Sad red house. The house I do not belong, but do belong to. I put it down on paper, and then the ghost does not ache so much. I write it down, and Mango says goodbye sometimes. She does not hold me with both arms. She sets me free. One day I will pack my bags of books and paper. One day I will say goodbye to Mango. I am too strong for her to keep me here forever. I will go away. Friends and neighbors will say, "What happened to that Esperanza? Where did she go with all those books and paper? Why did she march so far away?" They will not know that I have gone away to come back. For the ones I left behind, for the ones who cannot out. And then just, very sort of beautiful, poignant ending there by Cisneros. And that is House on Mango Street, just a miraculous jewel of a little book.